Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining today's section. And we're starting our bootcamp, and this is a software testing bootcamp organized by Tunga to help our developers to be job ready. And of course, we know that it's important that we get ourselves equipped for jobs. So when the opportunity comes, we are ready to take the opportunity. So once again, thank you all for joining and welcome to this edition of our software bootcamp. And today is the first day. Wow, okay, someone is raising. Okay. Can you all hear me? Can I just drop a
Yes,
message?
Bami, we can hear you.
Okay, okay. Pearl, can you try to on your video? So I want to see what's going on. Okay, you can't? Yes, you can't.
I can't.
Okay, so let me try to see what's going on there. Yes. Let's see, let's try to fix that.
Hi everyone. I think Bami, let's start. Everyone is excited, I think we are ready to start. I can see some interesting questions. The session is 2 hours long. We shall be having it from Monday to Friday. Yes, and registration is still open. Share link.
Yes, the section is recorded and there's also a certificate at the end of the bootcamp. So yes, we are starting now, and we have two amazing facilitators here with us that will be taking us through this bootcamp. So Daniel, can you unmute your mic and let's get started. Share your screen or your screen shared.
I think I'll go, yeah. Bami. But still
IG.
can't, yeah, still can't start my video anyway. But I'll go ahead. Good afternoon, everyone. Excited to be here as much as everyone who's attending. It's going to be so much to learn in the entire bootcamp. Stay glued to your computers, phones for the entire duration of these sessions. So firstly, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Tunga and then also move into how the setup of the bootcamp will be eventually. All right, Daniel. Okay, my name is Agbedio Oghomwen, primarily a talent manager at Tunga. My colleague also Daniela Fedra, who will be facilitating the entire bootcamp, also a talent manager at Tunga. I'm from Nigeria. Daniel's from Uganda. Uh, Daniel, next slide. Yeah, Tunga, who are we? Tunga is a software development company that connects African developers as well as design experts to international software teams. We have over 500 developers who are on the platform. A whole lot more than 500 developers. I can't remember the current number. Uh, with over 500 developers, we live up to our mission to create the 21st century jobs for African youths. We have offices in Amsterdam, Lagos, Tunga Hub in Kampala, and Tunga definitely has a global reach to meet our clients, all of which are around the world, Europe, US, and Africa even. And then this one quote that we do have at Tunga is that we think that what you make of your life is your own responsibility, but we would like for everyone, especially the youth that hold the world's future, to be free and able to take control of their own destiny. All right, next slide, please. So far, it's been an amazing journey. Tunga was founded in 2015. And then we also got our office in Uganda in 2016. We had our first prototypes and projects. In 2017, we moved on from Uganda and then expanded into Nigeria. And also in 2018, right after that, we placed our first dedicated developer. 2019, we saw a lot of growth, reaching more than 350 developers on the platform. And then also we started out creating dedicated developer teams only. And then in 2020, there was also very steady growth. And 2021 saw our first Tunga Hub in Kampala, and it's been an amazing journey all the while. All right. What we do primarily is that we provide dedicated developers to augment our client teams and make them essentially part of the internal software team. And then we also provide dedicated teams. We build a team of remote developers in Africa. And then there's a very large community that we've built with over 600 vetted IT professionals from more than 24 African countries. Right, most of the technologies are all kind of like the usual suspects you find that developers within the community have are the ones you can see: Python, Node, .NET, Java, iOS, Go, PHP, Ruby, Android. Yeah, and then some of them you might not see on the screen. There are also DevOps developers who know Ansible, for example, and Terraform. There are also times when we have developers within the community that do things like Microsoft Dynamics programming, and then also some niche areas like game development using maybe Unity and C++. So it's a very huge community. We have a very diverse set of technologies within the community. So you're free to join irrespective of whatever technology you are used to or that you come with. Right, next one. At Tunga, we have a couple of products. Firstly, the academy, which is like a very important part of Tunga. We made a lot of investments in the academy to help our developers in our community get better. You know, as they grow in their careers, you find a lot of courses that you can take in the academy for free, entirely free. The link should be in the chat soon. Also, we have the Works platform, which is where the platform where you get to create your profile if you do join Tunga, and then also where you apply for roles, open roles that might fit your profile. All right, then if you are interested in joining Tunga, please follow this link in your browser. It will open up, fill out the form, we'll get your details and then contact you. There are a couple of tests to take just really to check where you are as a developer and see if you have the kind of experience we're looking for. But if you don't make it onto the platform, we can also help you through your journey and give you access to the Developer Academy, where you can upskill yourself and get ready to join the platform. All right. I think that's almost about it. This is the setup of the bootcamp. Daniel, would you like to take that, or I can take that also? So for day one, which is today, we'll look at the relevance of testing, just sort of like an introduction to software testing, as well as setting up your environment to be able to follow through the training for the bootcamp. On Tuesday, we'll do our first test demonstration, as well as do some REST API testing. On Wednesday, we'll test with Postman, really dive deep into the kind of tests that are possible. Postman is an amazing tool for testing APIs. On Thursday, we'll test with Travis CI, primarily how to incorporate testing into your pipeline as a developer, which is very important. Automated testing is an essential part of software development. It cannot be overemphasized. And then on Friday, we'll look at acceptance testing and also browser automated testing with Selenium. Yeah, that's really the setup of the entire bootcamp. Vincent has a question. If we can't unmute him, you can leave your question in the chat. Otherwise, can anyone unmute Vincent?
Yes, please feel free to unmute, and then you can ask a question. Yes, Vincent. If you're speaking, then you're muted. All right. Otherwise, then leave your question in the chat. We'll be able to follow up and try to answer all of your questions as they come in the interest of time as well. There's a Q&A where you can leave a question, and then one of my colleagues can then leave an answer, which could be much quicker than using the chat. Thank you so much, IG or Oghomwen, my colleague who happens to be talent manager, for the introduction of our session today, and also letting us know about Tunga. Thank you, Bami, for moderating the session, and Al for coordinating the session as well. So do you have any questions so far before we go into our main content today? If you have a question, please drop it in the chat. I'll give some 10 seconds, and if there's no question, then we'll get started with our main session. Someone is asking for the Tunga link. That will be dropped in the chat. Once again, Vincent, please unmute if you want to speak. You've been asked to unmute.
So, sorry, Daniel, I think there is a question here. Some VJ is asking, do you work with discovery? And Itinu is asked, okay, that's for the academic. So academic link, but VJ is asking if you work with discovery. So
No, I haven't.
all right.
Does that answer your question, Vincent? If it does, then I'd like to get into today's session. So today we're going to be looking at software testing. And as we all know, software testing is actually one of the phases in the software development lifecycle. So we have so many phases in the software development lifecycle. We start from requirements gathering all the way from analysis, and then along the way we have testing. So that comes in when you look at mainly the waterfall model, which outlines each and every phase of the software development lifecycle. And so the bootcamp this week, like IG has said, will be running from Monday to Friday, same time. We have 2 hours sessions, 4 to 6 East African time, and then 2 to 4 West African time.
Sorry, Daniel. They say you should be more audible. You're not so audible.
Okay, please let me know if you can hear me. Thank you. So yes, I'll just repeat myself for purposes of clarity. So software testing is one of the phases of software development lifecycle. And we have so many phases in the software development lifecycle. Yeah, so the bootcamp particularly highlights testing. I'm sure we've heard of things like unit testing, integration testing, regression testing, penetration testing. But this bootcamp will focus mainly on the developer end of things because there's sort of specialization or specialized roles for software testing. So we'll look at what testing should a software developer specifically do, and that would be more of the functional testing, which is unit testing and integration testing. So, but still today we're going to look at the theory of testing. We'll talk about the different types of testing, manual testing, automation testing. We'll look at functional testing and non-functional testing. Yeah, so the question then is posed, what is testing or what is software testing? So I think in our day-to-day lives, we all do some bit of testing. So let's say you wake up early in the morning at 5 a.m. and you're going to take a very cold shower. When you turn on the tap, the first thing people usually do is to put a hand to test the temperature of the water. Is it favorable for me to jump into the shower, or should I wait a bit for maybe the heat to come out? I can see a lot of smiley faces. So I know a lot of you relate to that. Yeah, so that is some bit of testing to see if the water temperatures in the shower are favorable for one to start showering. So yeah, that is testing the temperature of water. The same thing with the software. We're looking for whether we have developed the right products, and also whether we have developed the products right. We shall look at that later or as we go through the session. So what is the definition of software testing? So testing is a process or a phase in the software development lifecycle where we evaluate whether the software we have developed meets the specified requirements, or we try to identify any defects in our product prior to the release. So this can happen initially when you're building a product, or this can happen when you have built a product but you're trying to add some features to it. So let's say you built product A, but you want to create a new version of it, then you're going to have to do some sort of tests, and we shall see which kind of test this is. Yeah, so the IEEE defines software testing as a process of analyzing a software item to identify the differences between existing and required conditions. So we're looking for basically defects, and then we also need to evaluate the features of the software. Yeah, so which bugs do we look for, or what are bugs? So I'm sure as software developers, you come across this so much where people are talking about bugs, and one could wonder what are bugs, but then we get to realize that the name bug actually comes from 1946 when Hopper was released from active duty. She joined Harvard, the Harvard faculty, in the computation lab, and then she started her work on the Mark II. So the operators traced an error in the Mark II to a moth, an actual moth, which a moth looks like a butterfly. So that's where the name bug actually comes from. So what is a software bug? The different definitions we can give to this. So it can be a defect in the product you're trying to build. It can be a failure. So maybe a feature worked, but then some bit of it failed along the way. Then there could be inconsistencies in the software, in the results or the output we get from our software. Basically, it can be a product anomaly. It can be some bit of incidence that is undesired, of course. It can be a feature that maybe is a threat to the product that we have built. It can be variations, anomalies, or different incidents. It can be an error, a problem, or fault. So there's so many terms we can give a bug, but basically, in summary, these are undesired things about our product that we're trying to build. Any questions so far? Yes, there's a question about getting
Daniel, there are
certification.
a couple of questions. So let me just move back so I can read them out for you. So there's this part that, hey, I am mechanical engineering. I just started my life in tech and majored in Python, but I aspire to be QA. Will I be able to keep up with you guys who are good in development?
Yes, thank you, Edwin, for that question. It's actually a very good question. So we are looking at the software development lifecycle as a whole, not only development. So in software development, there's so many things that go on at different phases. It's not only about programming. So we have requirements elicitation at the beginning. We have analysis. We have system design. We have implementation. We have testing, and then we also have the stage where we roll out this product. So these different points or phases of the software development lifecycle have different roles, such as systems analysts. We have the software developers, we have the project managers. Yeah, so for this particular phase, we're looking at testing. So if you want to mention to QA, you're already doing Python, and I think you're lucky because I'll be using Python and Django framework to test this, but you do not have to know this prior. I will also be giving a brief crash course on Python and Django, which will take really just for the session. So yeah, you'll be able to keep up with us. Hope that answers your question, Edwin. Next question, Bami.
Okay, so we have another question. Is the 3 years experience requirement mandatory to join Tunga?
Yes, 3 years are mandatory to join Tunga. 3 years of professional experience, but also if you have maybe 2.5, then you can also consider your internship. Yeah, but the 3 years are mandatory. Why? Because we also want to give our clients the best of products that we can build. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So shall we receive certificate after the bootcamp? Yes, there is certificate after the bootcamp. Can a QA engineer join your platform? That means join Tunga.
Yes, we have different roles at Tunga, not only software development. We have even robotics engineers, people who can do embedded systems, DevOps, and different other tech-related roles. So yes, QA is more than welcome to join our platform.
Okay, so we have another question. Is computer science/engineering background mandatory to be a tester?
Ideally, you do not need the background, but also it gives you an advantage when you have this knowledge. So yes, it's definitely mandatory to know what you're testing for. If you do not know what the product is, then you cannot actually test it. Maybe you can do what we call usability testing. Yeah, but then if you're going to do majority of the tests, and if you have to become a tester, then you have to have some bit of background about computer science.
Okay. Okay. So someone is asking if the section will be recorded. Because Daniel's voice is slightly muffled. So Daniel, please, can you try to bring your voice out for us? All right.
Yeah, definitely. I will. Thank you
So
for the
there's
comment.
another, all right. So there's another question. I am transitioned from marketing into software testing. So I need to learn programming to break into this piece. That's the question. Do this person needs to learn programming to break into the software testing space?
Yeah, I think that is a similar question to one I just answered. Yes, you need some bit of background to know what you're going to be testing. Otherwise, then it could be a bit chaotic when you start testing. Maybe you'll not get the desired results that you're looking for. So you need some bit of background.
Okay,
Be
there's another
an effective test.
Okay, there's a follow-up question from Edwin, and he's asking if he did work while in school, does that count? That means for his 3 years mandatory experience, does his work in school count as experience?
So the experience is professional experience. If it is, if you're working while studying, then yes, definitely that counts. But if it's the projects at school, then that does not count. What counts is professional experience, because there's definitely a difference working in a professional field and then doing projects, study projects at school.
Okay. Okay, I hope your question is answered, Edwin. Somebody else is saying you should please be more audible. All right. Please be more audible. So this I don't want to murder this name, but I can pronounce Granda. Granda is asking, I am a GR, so that's junior tester, and get to write my ISTQB. Can I continue with this bootcamp? I think you can. So Daniel.
Yes, definitely you can.
Okay. A year experience as a QA software tester with good knowledge of manual and automation testing. Can I still join Tunga?
Sorry, what was the question again?
1 year experience as a QA software tester with good knowledge of manual and automation testing. Can I still join Tunga? So this is Martin asking.
Yeah, so we need 3 years experience testing so that we can give the clients the best of services as possible, which is why this year is mandatory. Yes, we do not doubt your ability to be a good tester, but maybe you could use maybe an extra year and a half to polish up and learn a trick or two, or become a master of your crafts, and then yes, you'll be able to join Tunga eventually.
Yeah, I think you can always join
Yeah,
Tunga, and Tunga can also help you grow. So you are welcome to join Tunga.
Definitely.
Martin.
Thank you so much, Bami. So keep the questions coming. Like to continue with the content. In the interest of time, we'll be taking sessions to answer your questions. But for now, let us dive into the content. So we've looked at what bugs are, we've looked at what software testing is, and now we'd like to look at the software testing principles. So when we're testing, what do we do? What is testing again? We're executing the program in a certain environment to find faults in this program or to detect any bugs, like the bugs we've just looked at. And then we also want to know whether we are building the right product and whether we are building product right. Yeah, so we have what we call verification and validation. So verification is where we prove the correctness of the program, and then validation is finding errors by executing the program in the real environment. So the slight difference here is verification: are we building the right thing? Are we building the product right? Yeah, and then so you need to check also with maybe the requirements specification from what the client has sent you to make sure that you're building the right product. So you have to check whether you're actually developing the features that are needed. So if someone says they want a program to, for example, do addition, and then your program does subtraction, then that is not the right product. However, this product would be working correctly. Yeah, so that's verification and validation. And then debugging is basically when you're testing, you could find different bugs or errors. That's in them debugging. So debugging would basically trying to remove the bugs in the system. So we've looked at what bugs are. There's quite a number of things, but basically a bug is something which an undesirable result or errors in the system, really. Yeah. So who does testing? Basically, anyone can do testing. So if you're a user of a system, you can do what we call usability testing. I think for people who play games, there's FIFA by EA Sports. They always do usability testing. So before they release a new release of FIFA, let's say this year will be FIFA 23, they'll have to do usability testing where these gamers from all over the world maybe come and try to actually play the FIFA before it has been released to the market. So if there's any errors or any undesirable features that these users identify, then they're able to notify EA Sports about this game. Then they'll, depending on what they discuss, they're able to make adjustments to this. And they are also paid, I think, per hour for playing these games. And so usually they look for the best gamers because they're able to identify even the smallest of things that people who are not ordinary gamers can identify. So yeah, that is end user testing. So the user does not know software development, perhaps does not have background in computer science or computer engineering, but they can actually be able to use this kind of system. So they can play FIFA, or they can use your website or your app. Then they'll tell you, you know what, this feature is really messed up, it doesn't work. I'm unable to log in using maybe Google or something like that, or I'm unable to access certain features. So the user can identify this for you. Then, of course, the team, the software development team or department, the IT department can also do its own testing. So we say software developers can do their own testing, which is what we're going to focus on at this point. So if you're doing maybe testing for security or testing for a non-functional, if you're doing non-functional testing, we'll not be focusing much on that. We'll be focusing more on the functional testing, which we're going to look at later on. So yes, there's software testers, software developers, the project managers, and any other person can test, really. Anyone can test systems. Yeah, and then when do we begin testing? Testing begins ideally at any phase of software development. But if you look at the waterfall model, then you're going to realize that testing is a certain phase, because waterfall simply means from one phase we go to another. Yeah, so after gathering requirements, we go to the next step and analysis. So up until the point where we develop and we reach the software testing phase. Yeah, but so you can always develop tests even with your requirements. Yeah, so testing can begin at any point really in the software development life cycle. And when do we stop testing? There are a couple of scenarios when testing stops. So when you, of course, hit your deadline, then you have to stop testing. When you complete your test cases, yeah, so test cases are basically situations that you create, ideally how the system works. So you can even create mock-up data. Mock-up data is really sample data that you can use. It's just test data. For example, if someone is going to log in, then they need a username and they need a password. So instead of using an actual user, then in your test files or your test code, you can create a user and assign this user a username, assign them a password, such that you're able to test maybe whether the user is able to access certain things or if the user is able to log in. So yes, when you do that, and then also, of course, when you have what we call 100% code coverage, then there's nothing more to test. But then also we look at tests have to be both negative and positive. Yeah. So if you're testing for example, logging in and then you use the correct credentials, that is a positive test. It means the test has passed. But if you used wrong credentials and the user still logged in, that's a negative test. So if the user logged in, that means there's an issue there. If the user does not log in with the wrong credentials, that means the test has also passed. So it's a negative test to test for when the system acts in the opposite way. Is that captured, right? So when your bug rate also falls, you can stop testing. Of course, you have targets as an organization or as a department or as a developer. Then also, of course, management can say, we're out of budget right now, so we cannot continue testing, for example. It's not the only reason, but there's so many reasons as to why we can stop testing. But these are some of the most common reasons as to why we can stop testing. So we have several testing types. We have manual testing, and then we have what we call automation testing. Yeah, so manual testing, of course, is you test the software manually. You're not using automated tools, which we're going to look at in a bit. You're not using scripts. So basically, the tester takes over the role of the end user, and they test the system to identify any unexpected behavior or bugs, which we've looked at already. So we have things like unit testing, we have integration testing, system testing, and user acceptance testing. These are all kinds of manual tests. Yeah, so a question could be asked, why would someone do manual tests? So basically, you cannot automate tests entirely, 100% test the system automatically. There's some bits of it that have to be tested automatically, and then there's some bits that you can test manually. So it's semi-auto testing in summary. Yeah, so you use a test plan, you have test cases that I talked about where you come up with maybe create different users, different details, and try to see whether they pass the different test cases that you have created for them. We have different test scenarios just to make sure that we have really tested entirely our system. Yeah, so that is basically manual testing. And then the opposite of manual testing is automation testing or test automation. Yeah, so this is when the tester writes scripts and uses the different software tools to test your software. For people who use Java, you've had JUnit, And then there are different other tools really that you can use for testing depending on the language at hand, right? So that is basically automation testing. We're using a tool and you're writing certain scripts. Yeah, so you rerun your test scenarios with this and you make sure that what performed manually can also be performed in a way that's automated. And this is usually quicker and is more accurate because it's done by other tools. So as opposed to manual testing, which depends so much on the individual at hand. Yeah, so that is the difference between manual testing and automation testing. Then we also have what we call black box testing. We have white box and we have the gray box testing. So black box is really where the tester or the testing is done without having knowledge of the internal workings of the product you're working on. So you do not know what the architecture of the system is. You do not know what the source code is like. You don't know how basically any of the system, how the system was built internally. You may not even know which languages were used at this point, right? So that's black box testing. You do not have knowledge of the internal workings of the product, right? Yeah, so the tester will interact with the system in terms of the user interface, try to put in different data or input, and then try to examine the output to see whether you're able to get the desired outcomes. So please keep in mind that we have both positive and negative tests, as I've explained earlier. So yeah, still a negative test has to give you the desired outcome. So if you use wrong credentials to log in, then the user should not be given access. That's a negative test. And if the user is given access and that test has failed, it means you need to go back to your code and try to debug what happened. Then you're able to fix it. And then still you test again to confirm correctness. Then we have white box testing. This is where, of course, the opposite of black box testing. You have knowledge of the internal logic of the program or the application, and then you also have knowledge of the structure of the code. So you know how where the different files are, how the code is structured, and basically how the data communicates in the application. So it has different names besides white box. There's also, it's called glass testing or open box testing. Yeah, so you can only perform white box testing if you know the internal workings of the code or the application, right? Yeah, so that is a difference. Then of course, gray box is when you mix black and white, then you're going to get a bit of gray. So what does that mean? We had black box testing where you do not have any knowledge of internal workings. The opposite of which is white box testing, where you have the knowledge of the system internally. So gray box basically is just in between. You have some limited knowledge of the internal workings of the application. Not so much of it, and again, not nothing at all. So you're just in between. Yeah, so you know basically a bit about the system. You're able to do the user interface as well. You're able to access maybe the design documents, able to access database, really on high level, not so much in depth like white box testing. Yeah, so having this knowledge, of course, helps the tester to prepare better test data, better test scenarios, better test cases, and consequently you're able to make better test plans. So there was a question about do you need to have knowledge about software development, or do you need to have a background about computer science to be able to participate in this bootcamp? Yeah, so this I think answers that question. So having this knowledge, of course, helps you to be a better tester. software testing levels. Yeah, so we've looked so far at manual testing, looked at automation testing, we've looked at black box testing. We have also looked at white box testing. We've had a look at gray box testing, and now we're looking at functional testing and non-functional testing. So, Bami, do we have any questions before I proceed?
I don't think so. I don't think we have any question. Okay. There is just one person saying that he has already started on web developers journey, soon jumping into the deep end to learn JS, but I was on YouTube and someone advised that one ought to do advert SES, that's computer engineering and science, 20 course to become a good developer. What's your take on it? Or should I still to the road I'm on? Okay, probably stick to the road I'm on. I don't know. I think you just need a general advice. Something.
Yeah,
So,
definitely. Yeah. So thank you so much, Bami. Yeah, so there's a lot of course, different paths to software or to the computer profession. So there's no straight path. Of course, different people advise based on experience and so you can actually do research on the topic from different sources, and then you can choose which path suits you. Because again, at some point, it boils down to an individual. So if you feel that you're already doing JavaScript, it's of course a very good language. It's a high level language. So yeah, you're able to do testing with this. There's a lot of frameworks as well. JavaScript, you could choose to embark on one of these frameworks. There's so many: React, Angular, Node, and so on and so forth. But also, if you do the course, it wouldn't hurt, of course, to have extra knowledge. So yeah, I would advise you that if you have the time, please take on the course. I hope that answers your question, Anna. Thank you for asking.
Yes, I hope so too. I hope that answers your question. So there is another one. Are there slots for internship with Tunga if I'm 1 year experience as a software tester?
No, at the moment there are no opportunities for internship. But when they arise, then of course we shall communicate on our different channels, social media, website, and also to our community of developers. But at the moment there are no internships.
All right. So that's the importance of joining the community, so you get to know when anything is coming up. So I'll join Tunga community.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, someone just also we take this last question so that you can continue with the content. So this person is Emmanuel is asking, which do you advise, testing after the design of the software is completed by the developer, or testing at every stage of the SDLC? Can you also talk on the software testing life cycle?
Yeah, definitely, Emmanuel, that is to come. Thank you for the question. So yeah, definitely, it's a question of first of all, how do you conduct your work, right? So there are some organizations have their standards, so you cannot change them if you're working for them. Then there are those that are really open to any form of work. So if you have to test at every stage, so be it, provided of course you meet the deadlines, because you could do so many tests and then you end up not releasing the final product. Yeah, so for me, it boils down to that. But of course, it's always good to test as much as you can, because the more tests you do, then the more quality assurance you have for the product that you're building. Yeah, so if that is our last question, then we'll move on to the software development levels. So we have, of course, non-functional testing, and then we have functional testing. Yeah, so here we have the different forms of functional testing and non-functional testing. For this particular bootcamp, because testing is quite wide, it's actually a profession of its own. So I've seen a lot of QA or quality assurance people, and then a lot of testers asking questions. So yeah, for this particular bootcamp, we cannot look at everything since we only have Monday to Friday, and we have only 2 hours every day. So we can only look at particular tests. And since this is focused more for the software developers, we are going to be looking at functional testing, yeah, as opposed to non-functional testing. However, for purposes of knowledge, we are going to highlight on also the non-functional testing, because it's important to also know what this non-functional testing is, and also to know what the difference is. So functional testing, we're basically testing the functional aspects of an application. What do we mean by functional aspects? These are basically the features of an application. So if you look at non-functional tests, you're looking at the non-functional aspects of the application we're trying to build. So basically, these are not features, I would say, but they still involve the system, they still involve quality, but then they're not to do with building the system. So if you look at something like documentation testing, you look at load testing. So load testing is the system functions fine, you've done functional tests, but then can it handle maybe over maybe 10,000 users if I were to be using the system at once? Say a lot of people use WhatsApp. So WhatsApp could work very well for 10 people, but then when we escalate it to 1,000 users, will it continue working? That is some bit of load testing. If it crashes, then yeah, that is it. Then there's also security, where we have things like penetration testing and all. And then we have reliability, performance testing, installation, whether work well in this environment. So basically, these are non-functional aspects of the application we're trying to build, or the product you're trying to build. When we look at functional, we're looking at the features I'm trying to build. Say, I'll use the simplest example we can all relate to is a login. So if you look at unit testing simply means you're trying to look at different small units, right? And then integration testing is when you put these units together. And then the channel continues, as you can see on your screen. We're going to go into the details of this in the subsequent slides. So yes, we have looked at functional testing and then functional testing. And we say functional testing is looking at basically the functional aspects of the application we're trying to build. So we can provide inputs, and then we determine if the results conform to the functionality that we intended for. Yeah, so functional testing of software is conducted on complete integrated system to evaluate the system's compliance with the specified requirements. So as we saw in the image before, we have unit testing, we have smoke testing, we have sanity testing, integration, white box, black box, user acceptance, and regression testing, all of which we're going to look at. So yes, we'll start with functional testing, and then we'll complete the theory bit of it with non-functional testing, and then I'll also be able to highlight on the prerequisites for tomorrow's session, such that we're able to, have our testing environments ready, Then we'll close the session with a Q&A. Yes, so when it comes to functional testing, we have what we call unit testing. Of course, it's performed by the developers, software developers. Before handing over to the testing team to come up with their own test cases for these different small units of the program we're trying to test. We also then look at that unit testing is performed by respective developers on individual units of source code assigned areas. So we could ideally in software development, if you're working on a project as a team, everyone is going to work on we either do pair programming where you're going to work on certain features with a partner, or you're going to work with them alone, and then you're able to perform tests for your particular features that you have built, so your particular units. So if we have, let's say, 3 different teams, they're going to have different tests for their different units, hence the name unit testing. So you use test data that is different from that of the quality assurance team, which goes without saying. Then, of course, the goal of unit testing is to isolate each part of the program and show that individual parts are correct, right? So we want to see that, oh, yes, the login works properly, logging out works properly, recovering of your password works properly, and then you're able to access the right data once you log in. So those are different units, and we want to make sure that they work appropriately. So when we put these units together, we have what we call integration testing. So integration testing basically is testing of the combined parts or combined units of an application, right? So it can be done in 2 ways, basically. First of which is what we call the bottom-up approach, and then we have the top-down approach. Yeah, I see some questions in the chat. Will the participants have or Kingsley is asking if the participants will have the presentations or the slides at the end of the program. Yes, definitely you will have them, and they will be emailed to you by Pearl and Bami. So yeah, do not worry. And also the session is recorded, so you will be able to access it on our YouTube channel, or once it's out, you'll also be notified. Thank you for the questions. Yeah, I do not see any other questions, so I would like to proceed with integration testing. So basically, we've looked at unit testing, and then this comes after. So bottom-up approach is where we begin with unit testing, then we follow with testing of individual units, then we go on testing the different modules or builds. So these modules basically are some bit of combination of units. So it may not be the entire system at large. So it can just be a few modules combined together. That is bottom-up approach for integration testing. And then we have the top-down approach, where basically you start with it's opposite really, bottom-up, top-down. So you start with the highest level, and then you go down to the units. Yeah, so ideally, in the software development environment, we have bottom-up testing, which is usually done first. So you begin with unit testing, then you come to integration testing later on. Yes, so we have system testing as well. Still falls under functional testing. So system testing is where we test the system as a whole. So this is basically some form of integration testing, because you now have matched all units of the application, and you formed your entire application. So you're trying to test it. Hence the name system. So it's an entire system. A system is basically combined units, that work together to achieve a common goal, really. So your small units are working together to give you a whole application, which has an intended purpose, perhaps discussed in the documentation, the system documentation discussed earlier before development commences. Yes, so that is what testing is, and it's really to see that you meet the specified quality standards, and this is performed by a specialized testing team. So teams that focus highly on testing and have that kind of experience. Yes, so we're able to verify the functional and technical aspects of the system, which then brings us to regression testing. Regression testing is still, we're still looking at functional testing. So yeah, regression testing is basically, earlier on we said when you make changes, you can test when you develop an application from scratch, or you can also perform tests when you are trying to make changes to a system. Let's say you've developed WhatsApp version 1.0.2, and then you want to make a new update to it. You want to include statuses to it or some sort of privacy. So the system, the larger application already exists, but you're adding more units, more components or features to it. So you have to basically perform tests to make sure that your new changes do not crash the entire application, or to make sure that also your new changes work seamlessly with the old version of the application, right? Yeah, so basically, it could also be that you have fixed a bug. So if you found a bug and you're trying to fix it, then you maybe try to add the new files or add new features to rectify or to debug the bug. Then that is some form of regression testing. We also have what we call acceptance testing, and this is also conducted by the quality assurance team. I think we saw a lot of QA questions or questions from QA people. Yeah, so yeah, this is some sort of test that you perform. We have pre-written test scenarios, test cases. You have a test plan, and you're trying to test this application entirely. It doesn't only have to be technical. You can also test whether there are contractual requirements for the system, what are the legal requirements for the system, or what's the legal acceptance this system you're trying to build. So there's also that kind of acceptance test. Basically, the system feasible to run in a public environment, something like that. That is some form of acceptance testing. So performing, of course, acceptance testing reduces on how the application will perform in production. We also have what we call alpha testing, which is the first stage of testing, which is performed by developers or QA teams. So unit testing, integration tests, system tests. We put all of these together before what we call alpha testing. I hope you still remember what those types of tests are as we looked at them. Yeah, so during this phase, you're trying to look for maybe spelling mistakes, broken links, the application also is tested on different machines, specifically those with low specifications. Yeah, to test for loading times and any latency problems. Then we also have beta testing. So beta testing is basically testing software from requirements which are non-functional. Yeah, performance. Oh, sorry, this is something different. Beta testing is basically performed after alpha testing. Yeah, and it's intended for audience tests of the application. It's known as pre-release testing, which is then after alpha testing. And so you're trying to test whether users will install and run the application and send feedback to the project team typos or confusing application flows, crashes, trying to look for feedback from the project team, fixing problems before releasing the software to the users. You're trying out to see if there are more issues to fix. Yeah, so that is some sort of beta testing, which happens after testing. So now we look at non-functional testing. Yeah, so any questions in the chat before we proceed?
There's no question for now, so I think you can just proceed.
Okay, I'll just proceed. Thank you so much, Bami. Yeah, so we looked at all the tests we looked at are functional tests. So now we are going to look at the non-functional tests. So non-functional tests basically we're looking at the non-functional attributes, like we said previously, such as performance, security, user interface testing. So we'll, the first test under this will be the performance testing. Basically, it's performed by developers, before handing over to a testing team to execute the test cases. So the unit testing is performed by the developers of the individual units of source code. And then the developers will use the data that is different from the test data of the quality assurance team. Basically, that is performance testing. So we're looking for any performance issues such as network delay. We're looking for client-side processing issues. We're looking for database transaction processing issues. We're looking at load balancing, data rendering, the speed, capacity, stability, scalability of this. Then we also have what we call load testing, which is another, or I've already explained load testing. So we're trying to see if the behavior of the application when we have the highest number of people that can use the application at one time. So if you anticipate 1 million people to use the application at any given time, then you're going to have to test for 1 million users. Yeah. So we're trying to identify the maximum capacity of this software and its behavior at peak time. So when you look at load, how much load can your system take, right? So it's performed with the help of automated tools, such as load runner, uploader. We also have Visual Studio load tests. We have JMeter, the Apache JMeter. I think this should be common amongst the developers. We have Silk Performer, and we have the IBM Rational Performance Tester. So these are different tools that can be used for load testing. So basically what happens here is that virtual users are defined in the automated testing tool, and then the script is executed to verify the load testing for the software. The number of users can be increased or decreased concurrently or incrementally based upon the requirements at hand. Yeah, so that is load testing. And then something similar we shall look at is the stress testing. Yeah, so stress testing basically is you're trying to study the application you have built under abnormal behavior, right? So it's similar to load testing, but what if you test it beyond the actual load limit? What would happen? You're trying to stress, from the name, you're trying to stress the system to see whether it's resilient. So basically the aim of stress testing is to test the software by applying the load to the system, taking over the resources used by the software to identify breaking points. So it can be performed by testing different scenarios such as shutdown or restart of network ports randomly. You could also turn the database on or off, and then you see what happens or you could run different processes that consume a lot of resources. Yeah, so such as CPU, memory, or server. So you're trying to see, basically, you're trying to stress the system and see how it performs under a lot of stress. A slight difference from load testing, but quite similar. Yeah, then we have usability testing, which I think we looked at, where it's mainly performed by users. Where I give the example of FIFA, which is created by EA Sports. There's no other example I can give at the moment, unfortunately. So if you do not relate to FIFA, then maybe another example I can give, the more general one, is when applications are being developed, users are paid to basically just use the system and try to criticize it. And then this information is used by the IT department or the software development team to, of course, make it more user-friendly. Yeah. So from usability testing, we also have what we call security testing. So security testing, basically trying to look for any flaws and gaps from the security point of view, or any vulnerabilities, which can be used to exploit maybe users of the system or try to also penetrate the system. So the main aspects of testing to ensure, of course, confidentiality. You wouldn't want someone to, for example, access your private, maybe it could be WhatsApp even. Integrity, we're trying to also check for authentication. We're trying to ensure the availability. So maybe if it's meant to be available 24/7, we're trying to look at authorization and repudiation. We're trying to check for SQL insertion or SQL injection attacks. We're trying to confirm the input and output validations, things like cross-site scripting. Some of these terms may be new, but basically, in summary, we're trying to make sure that the system is secure for its users. I think if you have developed mobile applications before you deploy or your app is live on App Store, Play Store, then of course it has to go through some tests. It's different from when you're hosting a website. For a website, you're just going to do your code, run your files, and then push it onto any hosting service, DigitalOcean, GoDaddy, whatever you're comfortable with. But with mobile applications or the app stores or Play stores, then they're going to perform some tests to see, is your application trying to access users' data? And if you've installed applications, they always ask you for permission, right? Do you want to allow this application to use maybe your location, or this application wants to use your camera or to access your gallery? So basically, there's things like that. So ideally, we're just trying to see if the system we're developing is secure. Then, of course, there's portability testing, where we want to ensure reusability of the application and that it can be moved from another software as well. So basically, can this application work on a mobile phone? Can it work on a tablet? Can it work on a laptop? And even smart televisions, is it able to work on smart TVs? So basically trying to gauge for that kind of portability. Yeah, I believe that is all about the non-functional or functional tests. I think I've spoken a lot, and I'd like to maybe respond to a few questions before we look at the last bit, which will help us with tomorrow's session. any questions at the moment? Yes, Musimenta, you will receive emails with this presentation. You'll also be able to receive you'll be able to receive videos once they're out, and at the end of the session you will get your certificates. That will be after Friday. So anytime after Friday, provided you have been available for this session and you fully participated at least to more than 80%, you're able to receive your certificate. And then we'll be able to share this with you. Thanks for the positive comments that are coming in. We're glad that we're making an impact.
Okay.
Careers. Yes, Bami.
Yeah, well done, Daniel. Thanks for the presentation so far. It's cool. So we have some questions on the Q&A. I think it will be nice if you can take those questions soon. So some were already answered, but then I think I could just that's what did I just finish school? Yes. Okay,
Yes,
so
maybe
is
for
asking if what?
Yeah, I was saying maybe for the larger team, you could just go through them so that everyone can have that.
Yes, we've answered most of it, but there is this one that is asking if it is like sorry, I joined it. Is 3 years a minimal requirement for what exactly? So is it that 3 years is the minimum requirement of joining Tunga community, or 3 what exactly?
Yes, it's 3 years experience to join the Tunga community, because when you join the Tunga community, you're then able to access a lot of things such as jobs or opportunities with different clients across Europe or the USA. You're also able to access the academy. At the moment, you can access the academy even when you're not on the Tunga community, but then you're able to join, of course, after completing, doing the test, testing yourself after completing the course on the Tunga testing platform. So there's really a lot it takes, but then to be part of the community, you need to have at least 3 years of experience. It will make life much easier for you.
Okay, so another one is I diverted, so I'm only just tracking back my track into tech, tracing back my tracks into tech. I know it's not going to be easy, but I'm so willing to give it everything it takes at this time. I'm considering learning Python programming language because of its functional flexibilities. Any advice, please, and how to get the Python IDE? Also, can I learn from scratch via Tunga Academy?
A very good question. Yes, of course, we have great Python courses in the Tunga Academy. And you can start from scratch from the Tunga Academy. There's beginner courses. We also have intermediate courses, advanced courses. You'd also have to learn data structures and algorithms. So my colleague, Oghomwen from Nigeria, last time, in the last previous bootcamp, I don't know if there's anyone who was here for the previous bootcamp. You can just let me know in the chat how that went, and just let me know that yes, you're there and you're back again for more content. So we're able to talk about things like data structures, which are very important to anyone who aims to become a very proficient developer. We will have different courses, still algorithms. So data structures and algorithms usually come in hand to hand, but both can be intense, as Oghomwen was showing us the last time. But if you miss a session, then it's available on our YouTube channel. Maybe Paul or Bami could share the link with you in the chat, or they could share the link with you in the email. So you'll be able to receive these links so that you can catch up on data structures. So yes, my advice to you is frameworks, and also in terms of the different fields you can use Python. There's so many fields in IT where you can use Python, not only for software development. You can also use it for data science. You can use it for machine learning, artificial intelligence. So if these are kind of things that interest you, you can take on that path.
Okay, so another question is, will the tests we write work across Fast API and Django?
Sorry, Bami, I did not get that correctly.
Okay, so Ismail is asking if the tests we write work across Fast API and Django.
We may not be able to use Fast API because we're not looking at software development. We're now looking at a different phase of a different phase in the software development lifecycle, which comes after development. So that would be testing. So be focused more on testing. However, the projects we're going to be using, the demo projects we're going to be using are going to be Django projects, Django Python. So I'll be giving a crash course tomorrow before we can actually demonstrate on how the testing is done. So we're simply going to focus more on testing, but of course, to understand it, we need to maybe understand the structure of Python a bit. And yeah, that will help us to make the most out of the testing. So if you don't understand the Python, and still you do not need to know Python, what I will tell you tomorrow will be just enough for you to go through this. You don't need to be Python developer per se, but then you need to have some bit of software development knowledge. And even if you don't, then you'll still be able to follow through.
Okay, I hope that question is answered, Ismail. So there's another question from an anonymous. This person is asking, I just discovered QA engineering some days ago, and this bootcamp came up during my search. So this bootcamp beginner friendly. Is this bootcamp beginner friendly? Because some questions in the chat room are a little advanced.
Yes, this bootcamp is beginner friendly. We're not going to be looking at very advanced projects during our testing. We're simply going to be looking at how to conduct tests on basically if you've written a program 2+2, the output should be 4. How do you write unit tests for this? If you're trying to build a calculator, then how do you do integration tests for this? Yeah, so we're not going to be looking at very complicated things as Oghomwen took us through last time with the data structures. I can see the carrier was there last time. It's good to have you back. Hopefully, this will be a great bootcamp for you as well.
Okay, awesome. So you talked about, okay, Manuel is asking again, you talked about functional and non-functional testing. Where do maintenance testing come in?
Yeah, so maintenance testing is functional testing, right? So when you say maintenance, you know that maintenance is not a feature of a software application, right? So that functional testing looks at features of the application we're trying to build. So when it comes to maintenance, performance, and all the other tests that we looked at, then those fall under functional or non-functional testing rather. So maintenance tests are done when the software has already been deployed, right? And then maybe you need to enhance it or change it a bit, or migrate it to some other hardware. So let's say it was working on maybe only Windows, so you need to maybe make it run on a different platform, something like that, for example. Yeah. And then there was a question on about the software testing life cycle. It's basically that's a good question because I actually had forgotten to talk about it. So why I did not talk about it much was because I have talked so much about the software development life cycle, which is quite similar really. So you have what we call the requirements analysis, right? So you have to, of course, know what the requirements are for a particular system, functional and non-functional requirements. And from the functional requirements are still features, non-functional requirements are, non-functional aspects of a system. So there's an example of a non-functional feature would be is it aesthetically pleasing to the user? That's a non-functional requirement. Yeah, so we have what we call the software testing lifecycle. We have the requirements analysis, then you do the planning, then you do the design. Basically, the software development is done because you can do tests prior to development, but then you have to test the actual system as well. So development has to be there, then you have to do some bit of testing as well. So it's similar to the software development lifecycle. So you do requirements analysis, you do the test planning, you develop test cases, then you come up with the test environment setup. Some platforms have this already set up for you in terms of what we call a sandbox. A sandbox is basically an environment where your application runs in test mode. So it's not live in production, right? Production is something that's out there that's being used by users, but then you can simulate the production environment for test purposes, to play around with dummy data and see how the system would work in a real environment. So then there's test execution, and then of course there's what we call the closure of the testing cycle. So those are the phases really similar to what we just looked at previously, the software development lifecycle. Over to you, Bami.
Okay, thank you for answering that question, Daniel, and I hope, Emmanuel, your question is answered. So we have a lot of questions. Basically, we have a lot of questions in the chat box, and I'm still on the question and answer part. And someone just asked that, can data scientists join your platform? Meaning, can a data scientist join Tunga?
Yes, definitely. They're more than welcome to join Tunga. We have a lot of opportunities for data scientists or data engineers and any other tech-related roles. You're more than welcome to join the Tunga platform. Of course, provided that you meet the requirements that we have talked about throughout this bootcamp.
Okay, so another question is, are we going to be working on live projects in this bootcamp?
Are we going to be working on what
projects? Live project.
On a live, yes, definitely. Today is a theoretical session, so to basically give us some bit of background on testing, the different forms of testing or different classifications of testing. So yeah, we'll look at the different kinds of tests, and yeah, we'll be looking at the actual code beginning tomorrow, and which is why I want us to look at the testing environment. I said maybe between this time and tomorrow we have this set up, and you can try it out. But also you'll be able to clone this project from my GitHub profile or my GitHub account. So yeah, it's going to be really easy for you to follow through.
Okay, so moving on. Thank you, Daniel. Moving on. Etoro is asking, please, where do white box testing fall in?
Where does white box
testing? Yeah.
Yeah. So first of all, what is white box testing? It's testing when you have knowledge of internal workings of the application, right? So when you have knowledge of internal workings of the application, what are you testing for? Once you testing features, then that's function testing. If you're testing on different non-functional aspects or non-functional features of the application, then you are looking at non-functional testing. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, so Joseph is asking any alternative for VS?
Of course, yeah, you can use any text editor out there, like Atom or Sublime Text. There are quite a number, really, depending on, first of all, which environment you're running, which operating system you're running. Yeah, so depending on, really, it also depends on you as an individual in terms of preference. But why I specify VS Code is because that's what we're going to be using. So just for uniformity, maybe you can just install it for this particular bootcamp or session, and then later on you can go back to what you're comfortable with or what you prefer.
Okay, thank you again. Ismail is asking the links to GitHub, if it's possible, also your Twitter and LinkedIn too. So he's asking for link to your GitHub and if it's possible, Twitter handle and your LinkedIn handle too. Ismail.
Yeah, definitely. I can share those, but you could just use my name, Daniel Afedra. You will find me on all of these different platforms.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'd just like to go on to the test environment setup that we're going to be using tomorrow. So these are some of the prerequisites for this bootcamp. Yeah, there were a lot of questions about whether we're going to have hands-on or some code involved. And yeah, I think starting tomorrow, if of course time allows, we shall be able to do our first test demo. But I will also be doing a crash course on Django, which will be using for testing. So yeah, the Python people will really enjoy this session because they already have a head start. But then we'll be able to catch up to them within no time. Yeah, so that we require you to have a text editor, like Visual Studio, what we'll be using. And once you receive this form of presentation, the link is already available, but still you can just go ahead and visit the link directly. So any text editor really can work, just depending, of course, different text editors have different advantages. Then we have, of course, Python. You need to have Python installed. I think I used Python 3.7 for this project. So you can just install the latest, doesn't really matter. It should run just fine. But if any issues arise, you can let me know, and then we can debug these things together in a live session like this. Then you need to have Git installed. Why do we have Git installed on your machine? So that we're able to run these tests locally before we push our code to GitHub, where we're going to be using continuous integration tools like Travis, as Oghomwen already mentioned. We'll also be able to use things like Flake 8 and yeah, other different tools available. So ensure that Git is installed. I will also be looking at how to push your code to GitHub. We'll be looking at basically the different tools out there that you can use for testing. Cover rules for code coverage. Do not worry about those that are listed here because I will also demonstrate how to have them tomorrow. But however, to make our session tomorrow much quicker and to focus on the testing bit of things, you could just go ahead and have this installed ready. Maybe Pal and Bami are going to share the links with you in the chat as well. For those that want to install them immediately after here, please feel free to install them. If you already have them, kudos. Just make sure that you have every dependency installed and maybe you have the latest versions such that we do not have any problems. Then of course our package manager will be pip. If you're not familiar with it, still it doesn't matter. I'll be able to avail you with commands to install the different things. And then of course when it comes to operating systems, I've listed them in order of preference. So if you're able to use Linux, well and good. Mac OS is also okay because basically it's all Unix-based operating systems. Then if you have Windows, it's not a bad thing really. We'll still be able to get things done. I can see Zakaria is using Windows. Yes, it doesn't matter really. The operating system, we're not going to be doing any testing on operating systems, but basically these environments, the difference will come in the kind of commands that we're going to run in the terminal. So that is where the difference comes in. If I'm to run, so for Linux and macOS, you're going to find that it's a Unix-based operating systems. The commands are basically the same. But then when it comes to Windows, there's a slight difference. So that's where challenges may arise, but I'll try to balance them both for all operating systems as much as I can. Then we'll also be using Postman. This will come on Wednesday. Postman is basically for testing APIs. Yeah, we'll know what APIs are. But in summary, an API is really a user interface of one system to another. So basically, when you're using WhatsApp, you're able to see maybe contacts and all of that. But then, how does let's say your bank communicate how does your banking application communicate to, let's say, a digital wallet you're trying to interact with, right? So there's data it's supposed to get and data it's supposed to see. So that's why we're going to look at things like JSON and XML. We'll get to see that. So basically, an API is a user interface for a system, from one system to another. So basically, how two systems communicate with each other. We'll be able to look at that. And yeah, those are really the prerequisites for this session that's coming tomorrow. If you already have this installed, just make sure that everything is running fine. If you do not have them, please make sure you do. And I'd also advise you for tomorrow's session, you try to do this hands-on as well as we do it live, so we can do it together. It can be more interesting. Yeah, with all that said, I think that brings me to the end of today's session, and then I'll leave it open to my colleagues to take on the questions and any other things that may come up at the moment. Thank you so much for coming, and hope to see you tomorrow. Bye for now. Over to you, Bami.
Okay, thank you very much for that section, Daniel and IG. Thank you so much, IG. I'm sure, okay, we're having awesome comments in the comment section, and I think everybody loved the section. So thank you once again, Daniel. But then we have a couple of questions here. So I'll be directing the question to Daniel, right? Daniel, you're hopefully. Hello, Daniel, can you hear me?
Oh yes, Bami, I can hear you.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So I'll be directing the questions to you. I think we have a lot of questions. I'm trying to go. Okay, someone is asking that, is there any significant difference between Swagger and Postman? Daniel?
Yes, so Swagger basically is for documentation, yeah, of the API. And Postman, we say this for testing. So that's basically the difference, or that's basically what they are.
Okay.
So yes, just to make it clear, Swagger is for documentation, the API or API documentation, and then Postman is for API testing. And maybe just to highlight also on the API testing, we're going to be looking at the RESTful APIs, REST APIs. We'll not be looking at the other kinds in the interest of time, but basically it's the same thing, really.
Okay, thank you very much, Daniel. It seems a lot of people are concerned about the 3 years, 3 years experience. So there's a lot of questions here, but I think it has been answered. Then once we'll just move on from that. So is there a room to learn practical? Yes, that also has been answered. There is room for practical. So, hello, thank you for the presentation. When rolling out a system, do I need to go through all those types of testing? It appears like this can increase the turnaround time for, that's supposed to be software dev or what? SW.
Yes, definitely. Maybe just to answer this question, it's mostly there's specialization. So the tests that a developer is supposed to do, then there's tests done by a specialized team, and even at the requirements, there's the different tests that are done. So yes, if you to do that on your own, all these tests, then that's going to increase the turnaround time. But remember, at the end of the day, the most important thing is quality of the application. So as a developer, at least you have to perform the functional tests.
Okay. Thank you. Paul is asking what is a Python version that we have to install?
I use 3.7, but you can just install the latest. You do not have to look for the exact version. Really.
Okay.
And then for the GitHub, I will also be sharing the link tomorrow, so you'll be able to access the project.
All right.
Yeah.
So I think someone asked if the requirements are on the slide. Yes, they are on the slide. And another person is asking if the recording will be available for every lectures. Yes, every lecture recording will be available. Okay, I'm being filled with the presentation. Please, how we gonna use listed software requirement? Okay, I think this person is asking if we are going to be using listed software requirement or one of it all.
Yeah, so we are going to be using all of that because in order to perform tests, we also need to have an actual software application to test. So it's not going to be a complicated application. It's just going to be something simple. So yeah, if you look at these requirements, you see that our code will be on Visual Studio. We'll need Python because it's a language we're going to be using. So you need Python installed such that can be interpreted. We're also going to be using Git to run locally on our machines before we push to GitHub, Travis, and Coveralls. For our package manager, we'll be using pip. And of course, we need an operating system to run all of this. And then, yes, when it comes to REST API testing, that will be on Wednesday. We'll be needing Postman as well. So yes, we need all of these, maybe not all at once. You can do Postman tomorrow or later on because we may not be needing it for tomorrow's session as Wednesday is dedicated for Postman.
Okay, thank you. And I hope your question is answered. We have another question, and this person is asking, will the bootcamp teach me everything I need to start out as a software tester / QA engineer?
No, it does not, because this session we're focused more on testing for software developers. So we'll be looking at functional testing only. If you want to enroll into for QA role, then you'll have to do more than that, because then emphasis is more on testing. But for developers, emphasis is more on quality of what you develop. So that's why we're looking at functional testing, which looks at the features of the application.
Okay, amazing. Thank you very much. Uluwa Sholami, I hope your question is, your Solami, sorry. I hope your question is answered. Okay, will other languages like C# and Java be considered? Anonymous is asking.
No, we cannot. They will not be considered. However, I'll try to just generalize it for all general purpose languages. The reason why we're using Python is it's easier to understand for all. And also, we cannot use all of them in the interest of time. However, the concept of testing is flat. So when you move from one general purpose language to another, the concept is the same. The execution could be slightly different based on the tools you're using for testing. So some come with inbuilt tools, and others have general tools such as Postman for the testing APIs.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. Awesome, thank you very much, Daniel. Another question, will the shared knowledge cut across, okay, I think it's almost the same thing. Will the shared knowledge cut across other programming languages?
Yes, it will.
Okay. I have just signed on the academic platform, but do not have access. How do I go about that? So it's asking.
Bami, could you repeat the question?
He said, I have just signed on the academic platform, but do not have access. How do I go about that? I think that issue getting access on the academic platform.
Yeah, if you have any issues, then you're able to access us via our emails, which Pal is going to be dropping in the chat. So if you have any queries, you can reach out to her, and then we'll be able to resolve the particular problem you're trying to face at the moment.
Okay, thank you very much. Someone is asking, is there a possibility of following along with Cypress, or one must install Python?
It really depends if you want to do it practically, or if you want to just learn by observing the sessions. But of course, it's always good to do it practically, because then the hands will remember when you're doing it again practically at work. So I would advise that you do it practically. It doesn't take much really to install Python or any of these things. Each takes maybe about 3-4 minutes, and then yeah, you're able to learn much better. So I'd advise that you install.
All right. So are we going to cover automation in this bootcamp?
Yes, we'll be using Selenium towards the end. We're able to see how that works. So the last 2 days, that's Thursday and Friday, we're able to see a bit of automation testing.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So there is a lock symbol with messages that you have no access to. Okay. I think it's author that is still talking about is no access. So Pearl is going to be reaching out to you. She should drop the mail so you can just your complaints, send your complaints to the mail, and an answer will be given to you. I want to see other questions. So we have other questions in the chat box, and I hope we are not behind time. Okay, yes. So we have other questions like, you're welcome. So, can new entrants in tech continue with this bootcamp? So say new people that are just beginners in tech, can they continue with this bootcamp?
Yes, definitely. They are more than welcome. And actually, it's very good that you're getting this from an early stage, so you'll be able to practice as you grow your skill. So you're more than welcome.
Okay, I think Samuel asked the same question. Is it free? Yes, this bootcamp is free. And I'm going to be adding this to it that before the end of the bootcamp, we are giving out Udemy course to 2 of our participants. So you just put your keep coming to the bootcamp and put your mind to it, and who knows, you can be the lucky winner to win the Udemy bootcamp. I mean, Udemy course. So we are giving out 2 Udemy courses to 2 of our participants that will be, I'll be here. So on Friday, on Wednesday, we are giving one out. Be on the lookout. So it's been an amazing time. Thank you, Daniel. And thank you, Haji, our facilitators. Thank you, Pearl, for coordinating the whole question and answer section. Thank you to all our participants, our attendees for joining this section today. I'm sure you all had an amazing time. The whole section, or the whole purpose of the section was met, and we are so glad. This, can you add Daniel, I just saw a question. Can you add us in a WhatsApp group for easy communication? Oh, this person is saying it's an humble request. I don't know. Daniel?
Yeah, definitely. We can create a group, and then we'll be able to share the link to join in your email.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. And in this group, we'll be able to share materials, links, and every necessary content.
Okay. All right. So you're here, you are not in Tunga, you can always shoot your shots, apply to become a developer in Tunga, and you can go through all the assessments and the interview, and yeah, you're always welcome to join Tunga. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for joining. We're looking forward to seeing you again. Come with the old energy and with the positive energy, and come learn again tomorrow. So see you all tomorrow. Thanks for joining today's section. And yeah, we can call it a day. Thank you once again, Daniel, for facilitating this section. Thank you, Haiji, and thank you, Pearl. We are good.
Thank you, everyone, for joining, and see you tomorrow. Thank you, Bami and Pao.
Thank you.
For creating the session and answering the questions, the Q&A, and the chat. Bye, everyone. See you tomorrow, sometime, same place, and let's get our hands dirty.
Yes. So let's get all your requirements ready for tomorrow, and we kick off again same time, 1400, which is 2 p.m. West African time and 4 p.m. East African time. So see you tomorrow.